The storm over Manhattan had started long before the rain. Madison Hale felt it in her bones as the ambulance lights flickered across the glass towers outside Mount Sinai Hospital. She was in labor, alone, clutching the railing of the hospital bed while her phone buzzed uselessly on the tray beside her. Brandon's name never appeared, not once. A nurse wiped sweat from Madison's forehead, whispering, "You're doing great, honey." But she wasn't. She was breaking. The contractions hit like waves crashing into steel. Madison gripped the thin bracelet on her wrist, a simple silver band she bought herself when Brandon forgot their anniversary last year. She had told herself he was simply busy. She had spent years telling herself that. Hours later, when her baby boy finally cried for the first time, Madison felt her heart open like a sunrise. She kissed his forehead, her tears falling into his tiny blanket. This was the moment she had dreamed of. A family, love, safety. And then Brandon walked in. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose, and a faint trace of a woman's perfume, warm, floral, expensive, clung to him. Not hers. Never hers. "Sorry," he muttered, staring at his phone instead of his son. "Work emergency." But Madison saw it. A lipstick smear on his collar. Not red. A shade of deep plum. The one she had seen on Lila Mercer's Instagram just last week. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Brandon, where were you?" He didn't answer, didn't even look at her. Instead, he stepped closer to the newborn and whispered under his breath. Too soft for most to hear, but not soft enough. "This wasn't supposed to happen. My real family is waiting." Madison froze. Her breath vanished. Her world shifted on its axis. Everything inside her told her one truth. This man, the father of her son, had already replaced them. And she had no idea the nightmare was only beginning, and that his next action would push her to disappear from his life forever. The soft hum of machines filled the quiet recovery room, but Madison heard none of it. She kept staring at her newborn's tiny fingers, committing every fragile detail to memory while fighting the heaviness in her chest. She hoped, God she hoped, Brandon would at least try to be present now. The door swung open. Brandon stepped inside as if walking into a conference room, not into the first hours of his son's life. His hair was slightly messy, not from rushing, but from someone's hands. His dress shirt had been changed, but the collar still showed faint discoloration, where lipstick had been wiped away too quickly. He smelled faintly of expensive cologne, layered over something sweeter, feminine. "Did you sleep?" Brandon asked, eyes fixed on his Apple Watch instead of her. "No," Madison whispered. "I was waiting." "For what?" he replied, almost irritated. Madison swallowed the lump in her throat. "For you." Brandon exhaled sharply, the kind of sigh he used when an employee disappointed him. "Madison, I told you. Tonight was important. The board doesn't care if my wife is in labor." She tightened her grip on her son. "But I care. We're your family, Brandon." His jaw twitched, but he didn't answer. He walked to the crib, looked at the baby for barely 3 seconds, then stepped away as if the moment bored him. A nurse entered with discharge paperwork. Brandon took the pen, his Mont Blanc, and began signing without reading. His hand shook slightly. Madison noticed. She always noticed. "Rough night?" the nurse asked politely. Brandon forced a smile. Meetings ran late, but Madison caught the truth in the nurse's quick glance toward his collar. She saw the smudge, too. When the nurse left, Madison whispered, "Brandon, who were you with?" He froze. Just a second, barely visible. But Madison had lived with him long enough to recognize guilt sliding beneath his expression. "You're exhausted," he said, voice cold. "You're imagining things." "I'm not." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you want this to work, you need to stop questioning me." Her heart cracked, just enough for the light to escape. Brandon checked his watch again. "Let's get this over with. I have somewhere to be." Somewhere. Not with them. Not with his son. And in that moment, Madison understood something terrifying. He had already chosen another life. She just didn't know how far the betrayal went yet. The city glittered outside the car window as Brandon drove them back to their Park Avenue condo. To anyone else, the night lights of Manhattan looked magical, warm, golden, full of promise. But to Madison, the skyline felt like a backdrop to a life she no longer recognized. The condo was immaculate when they stepped inside. Too immaculate, as if no one had been living there while she spent the last 3 days surviving contractions and fear. No baby clothes folded, no crib assembled, no welcome home decorations, just silence. Brandon dropped the diaper bag onto the marble counter with a thud. "I have a call in 10 minutes. Can we make this quick?" Madison blinked. "Brandon, I just gave birth. And I congratulated you," he said, loosening his tie. "But the world doesn't stop because you had a baby." Her chest tightened. She stared at him, trying to find the man she once loved, the man who once held her face with both hands and promised her a future. But all she saw now was distance, cold, calculated distance. She carried the baby to the nursery they had planned together, or rather, the one she planned. The crib was half built, missing screws, a plastic bag of hardware still unopened. Brandon had said he would finish it tomorrow. Tomorrow had never come. Madison laid her son in the bassinet she had purchased last minute, then stood there, feeling smaller than ever. The walls, painted a soft blue she chose during her 7th month, felt like they were closing in. From the hallway, Brandon's voice rose sharply. "No, I told you not to call me here." A pause. A softer tone, almost tender. "Yeah, I miss you too." Madison's blood ran cold. She stepped into the hallway and saw him leaning against the kitchen island, speaking in a voice she had never heard him use with her. Gentle, warm, belonging to someone else. He ended the call abruptly when he noticed her. "Madison," he said, straightening, "don't start." "I wasn't going to," she whispered. "But you already did." Brandon rolled his eyes, grabbing his laptop bag. "I'm working late at the office. Get some sleep." She swallowed hard. "Will you be back tonight?" "Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him. Madison stood alone in the silent condo, holding her newborn close, realizing, a home can be beautiful, elegant, expensive, and still be the coldest place on earth. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the Park Avenue condo like a spotlight, revealing every crack Madison had ignored. She moved slowly, exhausted, cradling her newborn while heating a bottle. Every movement felt heavy. Her body hurt. Her heart hurt more. Brandon hadn't come home. Not a text, not a missed call, just absence. She tried to distract herself, placing her baby in the bassinet while she tidied the kitchen. Brandon's MacBook Pro sat on the counter, its screen half open, the Apple logo glowing faintly like an invitation she didn't want to accept. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't. But a soft chime broke the silence, an incoming message. A notification slid across the screen. Lila Mercer. "Last night was perfect. Next time, stay longer. Our future is worth it." Madison froze. No, this couldn't be happening. Not right after she gave birth. Not while she was bleeding, shaking, praying he would come home. Her hands trembled as she clicked the message thread. Images filled the screen. Photos of wine glasses clinking in a dim penthouse suite. Brandon's hand on Lila's waist, a reflection of his wedding ring in the glass behind them. Her throat closed. Another message arrived. "Lila, you'll tell her after the quarter ends, right? She'll understand. She has to. You deserve a real family." The words hit harder than any contraction she endured. Real family. Again. The phrase that haunted her delivery room, now confirmed in black and white. Her vision blurred as she backed away from the laptop. She gripped the counter for balance, struggling to breathe. Every promise Brandon had ever made crashed around her like a collapsing building. Footsteps echoed outside, the elevator doors sliding open. Brandon. He walked in with sunglasses still on, holding a to-go coffee and smelling like a different world, a world she wasn't part of. When he saw his computer open, he stiffened. "Madison, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked. "Who is she, Brandon?" He shut the laptop so hard it echoed. "You're overreacting. Tell me the truth." A long silence. Then Brandon looked her dead in the eyes and said the sentence that shattered everything. "Lila is the woman I should have built a life with." Madison felt her heart fracture. Clean, sharp, irreversible. And in that moment, she understood. This betrayal wasn't new. It was planned. And it was only going to get worse. Madison spent the rest of the day in a fog so thick she could barely feel her own hands. She fed her newborn mechanically, rocking him gently while fighting the tremor in her chest. Every time she blinked, she saw Brandon's words replaying like a cruel loop. "Lila is the woman I should have built a life with." The apartment felt colder than the winter wind sweeping down Park Avenue. By late afternoon, Brandon vanished into his office for a strategic call. Madison tried her best not to care. She failed. Her heart pounded with every muffled word coming from behind the frosted glass door. Then she heard it. His voice. Soft, warm. The voice she once believed was reserved only for her. "Yeah, I miss you too," Brandon whispered. "You're my future, Lila. We just need time." Madison's breath caught. A pause. A quiet laugh from him, one she hadn't heard in months. "No, she won't leave," he murmured. "Madison doesn't have anywhere to go. She needs me too much." The knife twisted. Her knees weakened, and she steadied herself against the hallway wall. She wasn't a woman anymore. She felt like a shadow trapped in someone else's life. A life built on lies she never saw coming. The door opened suddenly. Brandon startled when he saw her standing there. "How long have you been listening?" Madison shook her head, tears threatening. "You think I don't have anywhere else to go?" He shrugged, almost bored. "Madison, be realistic. You just had a baby. You're exhausted, emotional, and you can't survive on your own. Not with your job, not with your situation." "My situation?" she whispered. "You need stability," he said coldly. "And I'm offering it, for our son's sake. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He reached for his coat. "I'm meeting with investors. Don't wait up." The door closed behind him before she could ask anything more. Silence. Madison slid to the floor, cradling her baby against her chest as tears finally fell. She had tried, God knows she had tried, to keep her family intact. But Brandon had already chosen his reality, and now she faced hers. If she didn't leave soon, she would lose herself completely. She kissed her son's forehead. One promise rose quietly inside her. He will never grow up thinking this is love. That night, Manhattan glowed under a curtain of winter fog. But inside the Park Avenue condo, the air felt thick and suffocating. Madison moved slowly, carefully, as if her body had aged years in a single day. Her newborn slept against her chest, his tiny breaths warm against her collarbone, the only thing anchoring her to the present. But her mind kept drifting to the past, before everything cracked, before Brandon became a stranger in his own home. She stood in the dim nursery, staring at the half-built crib, a symbol of a promise he never intended to keep. Screws still in their plastic packet, instruction manual untouched. It reminded her of something painful. Brandon always started things he never finished, except this time it was their marriage. Her phone buzzed on the dresser, a message from a blocked number. "He's with her again. Thought you should know. You deserve the truth." No name, no explanation. But she didn't need one. Her hands trembled. She held her baby tighter, whispering softly, "I'm sorry you're seeing me like this. Mommy's trying." As she rocked him, her vision blurred. The exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was a deep, bone-deep ache, the kind that settled into every part of her. She walked into the living room, hoping movement would calm her nerves. Brandon's things were scattered everywhere. His Mont Blanc pen on the coffee table, his cufflinks glinting under the chandelier, a Dior scarf tossed over the sofa. Each item felt like a reminder that he had the luxury of choosing where he wanted to belong. She didn't. Her stomach knotted as she remembered his words. "You don't have anywhere to go. You need me. Don't make this harder." He had built a cage so quietly, she didn't notice the locks forming. But tonight, something inside her shifted. Not anger, not even grief. Clarity. She realized she wasn't staying because she loved him. She was staying because she was afraid. And fear was not a foundation she wanted for her son. She looked at the sleeping baby in her arms. His tiny fingers curled around the fabric of her shirt, as if trusting her completely. Madison exhaled shakily. "No more tears," she whispered. "We'll find a way out, I promise." And for the first time, a spark of courage flickered inside her. The courage to walk away from the man who broke her, even if it meant walking into the unknown. The next morning arrived without sunlight. Thick gray clouds pressed against the windows, dimming the entire condo as if the sky itself understood what was coming. Madison hadn't slept. She sat on the living room rug with her newborn sleeping on her chest, listening to the ticking of the wall clock, each second louder than the last. At 7:12 a.m., the front door opened. Brandon walked in casually, brushing snow from his coat. He didn't look tired. He didn't look regretful. He looked satisfied. "Morning," he said flatly, striding past her as if she were a piece of furniture. "I need to change. I have a presentation." Madison swallowed hard. "Where were you?" Brandon froze mid-step. "Don't do this," he warned. She stood up slowly, still holding her baby. "Brandon, I know. I saw the messages. I heard the call. Just tell me the truth for once. He turned, annoyance flashing in his eyes. You're being dramatic. Then say it isn't true, she whispered. Say you're not choosing her over us. A long pause, too long. He exhaled, rubbed his temples, then finally spoke, calmly, cruelly, with an honesty she never asked for. Madison, you and the baby were a mistake. Her heart fractured. Brandon continued, voice steady and emotionless. I should have built my future with someone who actually aligns with my life. Someone who gets me. Someone like Lila. She's the family I want. The family he wanted. Not her. Not their newborn son. Madison felt the floor tilt under her feet. Brandon, she whispered, trembling. He's your child. I didn't ask for this, he snapped. But Lila? She supports my career. She understands my world. She's my real partner. Real partner. Real family. Real future. The words sliced through her like glass. Then came the final blow. You'll stay here, take care of the baby, and keep your emotions in check. It's better for my image. Don't complicate this. Her breath caught. She stared at him, seeing not a husband, but a man who had already erased her from his life while she was still standing in the room. He added coldly, grabbing his watch. Accept it, Madison. This is how things are now. He walked away. And in that moment, something inside her didn't just crack. It broke completely, making space for the woman she would soon become. Madison didn't remember how long she stood there after Brandon walked out. Only the way silence swallowed the entire condo, pressing against her ribs until breathing felt like labor all over again. Her newborn shifted in her arms, letting out a soft whimper, reminding her she couldn't fall apart. Not now, not in front of him. She carried her son back to the nursery and sank into the glider chair. The room was still unfinished, screws scattered, crib half assembled, nothing ready for the life she'd brought into the world. Brandon's promise echoed in her mind. I'll finish it this weekend. Weekends had passed. He never did. She rocked slowly, staring at the pale blue walls she'd painted with so much hope. The paint seemed duller now, as if the room itself knew it had been built on lies. Her thoughts spiraled, raw, jagged, uncontrollable. How long had Brandon wanted this other life? How long had he been planning his escape while she planned their family? How long had she been loving someone who had already unloved her? A sudden knock at the door jolted her. Instinctively, she held her baby tighter. No one visited them. Brandon rarely allowed it. But it wasn't a visitor. It was a delivery. A concierge placed a large white box outside the condo door. Madison opened it cautiously. Inside lay a designer baby blanket, cashmere, embroidered, with a small card tucked into the folds. Expecting warmth, she unfolded it. She found ice. For our future child, B&L. Her breath stopped. Her vision blurred. Her knees weakened. This wasn't just betrayal. This was preparation. This was intent. Brandon and Lila weren't just having an affair. They were building a family without her. Without the baby she had just given birth to. Without the vows he spoke. Without the years she poured into him. She clutched the blanket, knees hitting the hardwood floor as grief ripped through her chest. It wasn't the blanket itself that destroyed her. It was the handwriting. Brandon's handwriting. Her sobs were silent, the kind that come from a wound too deep for sound. But then, something unexpected happened. Her baby stirred, tiny fingers brushing her arm as if reminding her, "You still have me. I still have you." And in that quiet, fragile moment, a seed of resolve took root. She wouldn't stay here to be replaced. She wouldn't raise her son in the shadow of Brandon's betrayal. She would find a way out, no matter the cost. By the time evening settled over Manhattan, the Park Avenue condo felt like a mausoleum, silent, cold, filled with the ghost of the life Madison wished she had. Her newborn slept against her chest, his warmth a fragile reminder that she had something worth protecting, even if no one else seemed to care. Brandon still hadn't returned. Not a call, not a text, not even a question about his son. Madison sat on the living room floor, the designer blanket, their blanket, lying beside her like a taunt from the future Brandon planned without her. Every time she looked at the embroidered initials, her stomach churned. She wiped a tear from her cheek. "This isn't your fault," she whispered to her baby. "You deserve better than this. We both do." The decision formed quietly at first, like a whisper she was afraid to hear. But the longer she sat there, the louder it became. Not rage, not drama, clarity. She stood, her arms aching with exhaustion but powered by a growing determination. She gathered essentials, diapers, a few onesies, formula samples from the hospital, and placed them into the only bag she could carry. Every motion was shaky but deliberate. In the bedroom, she grabbed a thin coat and the baby carrier. The condo felt unfamiliar as she moved through it, like walking through someone else's life. The expensive furniture, the marble floors, the glittering chandelier overhead, none of it belonged to her. None of it was for her. At the door, she hesitated. Fear whispered, "Where will you go? You have no one." But courage whispered louder, "Anywhere is better than here." As she adjusted the baby carrier, her son opened his eyes, staring up at her with a trust so pure it hurt. "I'm not letting you grow up thinking this is normal," she said softly. She opened the door. The hallway was quiet, the lights dim. She pressed the elevator button, heart racing so violently she felt it in her throat. When the doors slid open, she stepped inside, each step trembling but certain. As the elevator descended, she exhaled for the first time in months. She wasn't running away. She was choosing herself, choosing her son, and without knowing it, she was walking straight toward the one person who had been waiting to protect her all along. Madison stepped out onto the icy sidewalk of Park Avenue, her thin coat no match for the winter wind slicing through the night. Snowflakes drifted around her, clinging to her hair as she tightened the baby carrier against her chest. Her newborn let out a small cry, and she kissed the top of his head, whispering apologies she shouldn't have to make. Taxis rushed by. New Yorkers hurried past without a glance. Manhattan didn't slow down for broken hearts. She started walking, not sure where she was going, only knowing she couldn't stay. The cold bit into her fingers, and exhaustion pulled at her legs. She hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. Her vision blurred, the world tilted. She stumbled. A passing cyclist shouted, swerving around her. Her knees buckled, and then a pair of strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. "Madison?" a warm voice said, disbelieving. She blinked up through tears and snow. Ethan Carter, her college friend. The man who once knew her dreams better than Brandon ever had. The man she pushed away years ago because she thought she'd found her forever. Ethan stepped closer, concern etched across his face. He looked different, older, steadier, but his eyes held the same quiet kindness she remembered. "What happened? Why are you out here alone? You just had a baby." His gaze dropped to the tiny bundle on her chest, and guilt flashed across his face for not recognizing her sooner. Madison tried to speak, but her voice crumbled. I didn't know where else to go." Ethan didn't ask another question. He shrugged off his warm coat and wrapped it around both her and the baby without hesitation. "You shouldn't be out here. Come with me, please." She hesitated, fear whispering that she shouldn't burden him, but her legs trembled again. Ethan steadied her, placing a protective hand on her back. "You're not a burden, Madison. Let me help." The sincerity in his voice broke her last defense. She nodded. He guided her toward his parked Mercedes, opened the passenger door gently, and helped her inside as if she were made of glass. The heater hummed warmly, thawing the chill from her fingers. As Ethan buckled her seatbelt, their eyes met, and Madison saw something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. The car pulled away from Park Avenue, and for the first time since giving birth, Madison allowed herself to breathe. She had no idea that stepping into Ethan's car meant stepping into a new life, and the beginning of Brandon's downfall. Ethan's apartment in the Upper West Side wasn't large, but it radiated something Madison hadn't felt in months: warmth. Not from the heating vents humming softly, but from the way everything inside looked lived in, cared for. A soft throw blanket draped over the couch, a stack of medical journals beside a half-finished mug of tea, a framed photo of Ethan and his late mother on a wooden shelf. It felt like a home, something she never truly had with Brandon. "Sit," Ethan said gently, guiding her toward the couch. "I'll get you water." Madison nodded, lowering herself carefully while cradling her son. Her body throbbed with postpartum aches, and the emotional weight only made them sharper. She hadn't realized how desperately she needed to sit somewhere safe, somewhere she wasn't being judged, dismissed, or replaced. Ethan returned with a glass and hesitated before sitting beside her. "You don't have to say anything, but if you want to, I'm here." For a moment, Madison stared at the steam rising from his tea mug, gathering courage she didn't know she still had. "He called her his real family," she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened so subtly she almost missed it. He said my son, our son, was a mistake. Ethan inhaled slowly through his nose, as if grounding himself. Madison, I'm so sorry. She shook her head. Sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry doesn't give my son a father who wants him. Ethan leaned forward. Your son has you, and that already makes him luckier than most kids. Her eyes burned. She hadn't cried in hours. She thought she had run out of tears. But Ethan's softness cracked something open. Where will you go? He asked quietly. I don't know. Her voice broke. He said I have nowhere. Ethan didn't hesitate. You can stay here, he said, for as long as you need. Madison blinked, stunned. Ethan, I can't. You can, he insisted gently. And you will. You're not going back there tonight. Not after everything he said. She stared at him, feeling a knot loosen in her chest, one she didn't realize was strangling her. Her baby stirred, letting out a tiny cry. Ethan smiled softly and stood. I'll get pillows. You need rest. As he walked away, Madison looked around the apartment again. Safe, warm, real. And for the first time since giving birth, she felt something other than fear. She felt the beginning of a life she might actually deserve. Brandon Whitford returned to the Park Avenue condo that next morning, expecting silence, expecting Madison to be exactly where he left her, broken, obedient, and afraid to move. Instead, the moment he stepped inside, he felt something was off, too quiet, too empty, too still. Madison? He called out, tossing his keys on the counter. No answer. He checked the nursery. Empty. The half-built crib sat there like a crime scene. The bassinet was gone. Her coat missing. The baby carrier missing. Brandon's irritation spiked into something sharper, panic wrapped in anger. He grabbed his phone and dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. You have got to be kidding me, he muttered. He paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. His reflection in the glass windows showed a man who wasn't used to losing control. And this, her leaving, was not part of his plan. He needed her, not emotionally, but conveniently. Madison was his buffer, the wholesome image the board still believed in, the stable family man narrative he crafted. Without her, everything Lila pushed him to build could collapse. He called again. Voicemail. By the sixth call, fear finally cracked through his arrogance. Madison, pick up the damn phone, he hissed into the receiver. Where are you? Silence. Then he tried another tactic, one colder, more calculated. He called the hospital, disguising his annoyance as concern. My wife just gave birth. She's emotional. I'm worried she might be disoriented. The nurse replied gently but pointedly. Your wife left with the baby hours ago. She seemed perfectly lucid. Brandon clenched his jaw. Perfectly lucid was the last thing he wanted documented. He hung up and immediately called Lila. She left, he snapped. Lila's voice sharpened. What do you mean she left? She can't just disappear, Brandon. Not now. Not when we're this close. I'll find her, he growled. You'd better, Lila hissed. If she starts talking about us, about the transfer paperwork, we lose everything. Brandon ended the call and stood there, breathing hard, staring at the empty condo as rage simmered beneath his skin. Madison wasn't supposed to fight back. She wasn't supposed to walk away. She wasn't supposed to matter this much. But she did, not because he loved her, but because losing her meant losing the power he built on her back. And for the first time, Brandon realized Madison leaving could destroy him more than any affair ever could. Ethan watched Madison sleep on the couch, her newborn curled safely against her. The soft rise and fall of her breathing felt like a fragile miracle after everything she'd endured. He draped an extra blanket over her shoulders, careful not to wake her, then stepped quietly into the kitchen. But peace wasn't something he could hold on to tonight. His phone buzzed. 2 missed calls from the hospital, one from an unknown number. Likely Brandon. Ethan didn't answer any of them. He leaned against the counter, jaw tightening. He never wanted to be involved in Madison's marriage, never wanted to know the things he knew, but fate had a cruel way of pulling truths into the light. He opened his email. There it was, the file he hoped he'd never need to use. A medical report tied to a corporate insurance claim from months earlier, one that had crossed his desk because of an audit, one that connected directly to Lila Mercer. He clicked the document, reading the lines he memorized the first time he saw them. Patient condition. Permanent infertility due to prior medical complications. His breath tightened, which meant Lila couldn't possibly be pregnant, which meant her promise of a future child with Brandon was nothing but a trap. And knowing Brandon's signature appeared on several recent company documents transferring assets, this was bigger than a love affair. This was manipulation, ambition, fraud. Ethan shut the laptop, pulse beating hard in his ears. He didn't want to be the one to tell Madison any of this, not while she was barely holding herself together. But he also knew how dangerous Brandon and Lila could be. He walked back to the living room, watching mother and son sleep. Madison's hand curled protectively around her baby's blanket, as if shielding him from the world. Ethan whispered into the quiet, "I won't let them hurt you again." At that moment, Madison stirred, opening her eyes slightly. "Ethan?" she murmured. He knelt beside her. "Go back to sleep. You're safe here." Her eyes softened, weary but trusting. "Thank you for finding us." Ethan swallowed, emotions tightening his throat. "You have no idea how glad I am that I did." But he knew something she didn't. Brandon wasn't just chasing her. He was running from the consequences of his own secrets, and those secrets were about to explode. Lila Mercer stood in front of the full-length mirror inside her luxury loft overlooking Soho, adjusting a pair of diamond earrings that sparkled even in the dim morning light. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't shaken by Brandon's frantic call. If anything, she was annoyed. "How does he lose track of his own wife?" she muttered, applying a final stroke of lipstick, deep plum, her signature color. On the glass coffee table beside her lay a stack of unsigned documents, corporate transfer forms, stock options, and one power of attorney draft. All Brandon needed to do was sign. She had been grooming him for months, telling him it would simplify their future, that he needed to protect himself from Madison's emotional volatility. Men like Brandon were predictable. Give them admiration, the illusion of devotion, and just enough seduction, they would sign away their lives. Her phone buzzed. "Brandon. She's gone. Find her. We need to control the narrative." Lila rolled her eyes. "Control the narrative," she repeated mockingly, as if he ever controlled anything. She slipped into a tailored coat, heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor as she walked to the window. Below, the city pulsed with greedy ambition, her favorite energy. Then her second phone lit up, the one Brandon didn't know about. A message from an unknown corporate contact. Audit accelerated. Whitford's transfers flagged. Proceed as planned. A slow smile curled across her lips. Brandon thought their affair was about love. He thought she wanted a baby. He thought she wanted him. He had no idea he was just a stepping stone. The truth was simple. Lila wanted the power his company held. Brandon was only useful as long as he helped her get it. And Madison leaving? That only complicated things because Madison had something Lila didn't. Public sympathy. A fragile new mother disappearing with her newborn? The media would devour it. Investors would panic. Brandon would crumble. But Lila? She thrived in chaos. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, smirk sharpening. "Time to clean up your mess, Brandon," she said softly, "before it ruins my plans." She didn't know Ethan had already uncovered her greatest secret, or that Madison's escape was the first domino in a chain reaction she could no longer control. Because for the first time, someone was about to fight back, and Lila had no idea how much she stood to lose. When Madison woke the next morning, sunlight filtered through Ethan's apartment with a softness she hadn't felt in years. For a moment, she forgot the chaos, forgot the betrayal, forgot the pain. She only saw her son sleeping peacefully beside her, his tiny fists curled like promises. Ethan was in the kitchen, still wearing his scrubs from an overnight shift, quietly making coffee. It was the gentleness that almost broke her. She sat up slowly, wincing at the ache of her healing body. "Ethan, you didn't sleep." He glanced over his shoulder. "Didn't want to miss it if you needed something." The simplicity of the answer wrapped around her like warmth. No grand speeches, no guilt, no manipulation, just presence. He handed her a mug of warm chamomile tea. "Caffeine can wait until you're fully recovered." She accepted it with both hands, whispering, "Thank you." They sat at the small kitchen table. Madison watched the steam rise, feeling her heartbeat settle for the first time in days. This wasn't luxury. This wasn't Park Avenue. This wasn't the cold perfection Brandon demanded. This was human. After a long silence, Ethan spoke. "I have something I need to tell you. Something about Lila." Madison tensed. What about her? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. She's lying to Brandon. About everything. About the future she promised him. Madison's brows knitted. What do you mean? Ethan opened his laptop, pulling up a medical document. This crossed my desk during an insurance audit. It wasn't meant for me, but I recognized the name. She read the line that changed everything. Permanent infertility. No possibility of natural conception. Madison's breath caught. Lila couldn't have a child. Her entire future with Brandon was a manufactured lie. Ethan continued. She's using him, Madison. And based on the corporate paperwork I've seen, it's deeper than an affair. She's positioning herself to take control of his assets. Madison pressed a hand to her mouth. All those nights Brandon spent away, all those promises he whispered to Lila, all the cruel words he threw at her. He had destroyed their marriage for a fantasy. Her grief shifted, slowly, almost imperceptibly, into something steadier, firmer. Not revenge, not rage, but resolve. She looked at Ethan, eyes clearer than they had been in months. I'm done being afraid, she said quietly. If they want a war, they can have the truth instead. It wasn't a threat. It was the beginning of her rise. The news didn't break like a whisper. It detonated. By Monday morning, Brandon Whitford walked into the Whitford Tech headquarters feeling untouchable. His usual stride, his tailored suit, his careless confidence. But the moment he stepped through the lobby, he felt the shift. Eyes followed him. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones lowered discreetly. Something was wrong. He forced a smirk, adjusting his cufflinks as he entered the elevator. But on the 25th floor, he found the entire executive team gathered around a conference table, faces pale, screens glowing with headlines he hadn't seen yet. The COO turned his laptop toward Brandon. Breaking. Internal audit flags suspicious transfers at Whitford Tech. Possible misconduct linked to VP. Brandon Whitford. A beat of silence pulsed like a warning siren. Brandon's stomach dropped. What the hell is this? The CFO folded his arms. That's what we'd like you to explain. Dozens of documents flashed across the screen, each one bearing his signature. Stock transfers, asset reallocations, power-shifting moves he didn't fully understand because Lila had told him they were routine. She said, he stopped. God. He couldn't even finish the sentence. He sounded like a fool. The COO's voice sharpened. Who is she, Brandon? And why were company assets moved into her holding accounts? His pulse thundered in his ears. This is being twisted. I was consolidating. Without board approval, the CFO cut in. During a quarter already under scrutiny, another headline slid across the screen. Rumors of affair complicated Whitford Tech investigation. Sources claim VP's wife fled home with newborn amid internal turmoil. Brandon's throat closed. This is personal. It became corporate the moment company assets were involved. The COO snapped. Brandon's phone buzzed violently. Another message from Lila. They're panicking. Don't contact me. Destroy your copies of everything. His blood ran cold. The board members exchanged looks. They recognized the panic in his eyes. The COO leaned forward. Brandon, until this is resolved, you're suspended from all executive duties, effective immediately. The room spun. Suspended. Public scandal. Corporate investigation. Madison gone. Lila disappearing. Everything was slipping through his hands. He lunged for control. You can't do this. I built half this company. The CFO didn't blink. Then you should have protected it better. Brandon's breath shook as security stepped inside. His empire, the one he chose over his wife and child, was collapsing. And somewhere across Manhattan, in a small, warm apartment, Madison held her son, completely unaware that the truth she carried was bringing a powerful man to his knees. Brandon stormed out of the Whitford Tech building with his ego bruised so violently it felt physical. Snow whipped against his face as he walked, but he barely noticed. His entire identity, his title, his power, his curated reputation, was slipping through his fingers like water. He pulled out his phone and dialed Madison again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. He growled under his breath. Stop playing games, Madison. Pick up the damn phone. But somewhere inside him, panic churned. Madison had never disappeared before. She never disobeyed, never challenged him. The board might have suspended him. The headlines might be circling like vultures. But if he could just get Madison back, if he could parade her and the baby in front of cameras, maybe he could salvage everything. He tried hospitals next. "Has my wife checked in? She's unstable after giving birth," he lied smoothly. The nurse paused. "Sir, your wife seemed perfectly stable last time we saw her." He hung up, furious. Then he drove to her favorite bookstore, her old workplace, the diner she loved downtown. Nothing. No trace of her. Every empty stop fueled his rage. Finally, out of desperation disguised as strategy, he drove to Ethan Carter's apartment building. Ethan, perfect, dependable Ethan, had always been a threat Brandon pretended not to see. And now that threat felt real. He pounded on the lobby desk. "Is Dr. Carter home?" The doorman raised an eyebrow. "I can't share resident information." Brandon slammed his hand on the counter. "My wife is missing. She could be with him." The doorman didn't flinch. "Sir, I'm calling security if you don't calm down." Brandon stepped back, chest heaving. He knew Madison could be inside, protected, sheltered, choosing someone else over him. The humiliation tasted metallic. He returned to his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. "She thinks she can run? She thinks she can hurt me like this?" A darker thought followed, one he had never admitted out loud. Without Madison, I'm finished. He needed her back. Not for love, not for family, for survival. His phone buzzed, a news alert. Whitford tech scandal deepens. Investigation into VP's personal misconduct expands. Brandon cursed loudly. Everything was unraveling, and somewhere above him, in a warm apartment filled with real kindness, Madison held her baby, while Ethan watched over them like a silent shield. For the first time, Brandon understood. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the one being hunted, by the consequences he created himself. The conference room smelled faintly of polished wood and fear. Madison sat at the long mahogany table, her newborn asleep in a carrier beside her, Ethan at her right, like a wall of calm strength. Lawyers murmured quietly across the room, shuffling documents, preparing for what would be the most important confrontation of her life. The door burst open. Brandon strode in, jaw tight, suit perfect, eyes burning with panic disguised as anger. "Madison," he snapped, "this is unnecessary. We could have talked privately." She didn't move. "You had every chance to talk privately." He shot Ethan a venomous look. "This doesn't concern you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You made it my concern when you endangered her and the baby." Brandon scoffed. "Endangered? She ran off. She's unstable. Look at her. She's barely keeping herself together." Before Madison could speak, her lawyer slid a stack of printed screenshots across the table. "Then perhaps," the lawyer said coolly, "you can explain these." Brandon paled. Messages between him and Lila, hotel reservations, asset transfer documents bearing his signature, a voice memo of him telling Lila, "She'll stay. She needs me too much to leave." Each piece landed like a hammer strike. Madison kept her voice low and steady. "You said I had nowhere to go, but I'm not property, and I'm not your alibi." Brandon's mask cracked. "Madison, this is being twisted. Lila pressured me. I was protecting you, protecting our son." Ethan cut in sharply. "By calling him a mistake?" Brandon froze. His gaze flickered toward the baby, guilt, fear, and calculation swirling together. The board-appointed investigator cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitford, we have additional concerns." She opened a folder. "Medical documentation regarding Ms. Mercer." Madison watched Brandon's face drain of color. Ethan delivered the final blow gently but firmly. "Lila can't have the child she promised you. She never could. She's using you, Brandon, and you signed away half your power to her." A stunned silence. Then Madison leaned forward, voice steady, almost soft, yet sharper than any blade. "You threw away our family for a lie, and now that lie is taking everything from you." Brandon shook his head, panic rising. "Madison, please, don't do this. I need you." She blinked slowly, a single tear escaping, not from pain, but release. "You needed me when it made you look good," she whispered, "not when it mattered." The investigator closed the folder with finality. "Mr. Whitford, the board is moving forward with full removal proceedings." Brandon sank into his chair, defeated, and in that moment, Madison finally felt it. The power of the truth he never thought she would speak. The courthouse hallway buzzed with low whispers, the kind that ripple around scandal like heat. Madison stood near a tall window, her newborn asleep in his carrier, sunlight warming them both. For the first time in months, she felt steady, rooted. Ethan stood a few steps behind her, not hovering, just present, a quiet anchor. Brandon arrived moments later, flanked by two attorneys. His once sharp confidence was gone. His suit hung looser, his eyes dimmer. The scandal had drained him, professionally, financially, personally. He looked at Madison with a desperation that might have moved her once. Not today. The judge called them in. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavy with consequence. Documents lay stacked on the desk. Financial transfers, messages between Brandon and Lila, proof of deception, recordings of emotional manipulation, and the medical report, Ethan's reluctant but critical contribution. Madison breathed deeply as the proceedings began. Brandon's attorney tried to paint him as a man under pressure, misguided but loving. But every defense unraveled as evidence surfaced. The judge finally turned to Madison. "Mrs. Whitford, you left the residence shortly after childbirth. Can you explain why?" Her voice was soft, but unwavering. "He told me our son was a mistake. He told another woman she was his real family. And I knew staying would break me, and eventually break my child." A hush fell over the courtroom. Brandon swallowed hard. For the first time, shame flickered across his face. The judge folded her hands. Based on the evidence of emotional neglect, unsafe environment, and the father's ongoing legal investigation, primary custody will be awarded to Madison Hale. Madison's breath caught. Relief washed over her in a warm, overwhelming wave. Brandon lurched forward. "No, Madison, please. You can't take him from me. I can change." But she shook her head gently. "I gave you every chance to change. You chose not to." The gavel struck. Decision final. Outside the courtroom, Brandon approached her again, voice breaking. "Madison, don't leave me with nothing." She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time without fear. "I'm not leaving you with nothing," she said softly. "You already did that to yourself." Ethan stepped closer, protective but patient. Madison felt a strange lightness, almost like hope rising in her chest. For the first time, her future wasn't a cage. It was a beginning. Riverside Park glowed under the soft gold of a late afternoon sun. The Hudson shimmered like calm glass, and a gentle breeze brushed against Madison's hair as she pushed her newborn stroller along the quiet path. For the first time in what felt like forever, her shoulders weren't curled with tension. Her breath wasn't shaky. Her heart wasn't heavy. She was free, not running, not hiding. Free. Ethan walked beside her, hands in his coat pockets, keeping a respectful distance but matching every step. He didn't fill the silence with empty words. He let it breathe, letting her heal at her own pace. It was something Brandon had never done. They reached a small bench overlooking the water. Madison sat, lifting her baby into her arms. The world felt softer here, quieter, like a page turning. "You look lighter," Ethan said gently. She smiled, small, real. "I feel lighter." He hesitated, searching her face. "Madison, I need you to know something. What you did, walking away. Most people never find that courage." "It didn't feel like courage," she admitted. "It felt like survival." "Sometimes," he said, sitting beside her, "they're the same thing." Her eyes softened. She studied the man she once knew at 20, the one she let slip away because she thought loyalty meant staying where she was hurting. She wondered now if fate had simply been waiting for her to learn her worth. "Ethan," she breathed, "thank you for being there, for not asking anything of me." He shook his head. "I didn't do anything you didn't deserve." Their newborn stirred, tiny fingers brushing against Ethan's hand. A warmth spread through Madison's chest, gentle, earned, unfamiliar in the best way. She didn't need another whirlwind. She needed steadiness. She needed truth. And Ethan had never offered her anything else. He leaned in slightly. "I'm not asking for an answer today, or tomorrow, but one day, if your heart opens again, I'd like to be the man standing beside you." Madison blinked as tears welled, healing tears, not broken ones. She took his hand, squeezing gently. "One day, maybe you will be." The baby cooed between them, as if blessing the moment. Behind them, Brandon faced the ruins of his own making. Ahead of her, Madison walked toward a future she built with courage, and for the first time, she believed it. She deserved every good thing coming her way. So, That's where our story ends, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here, right now, listening to these last words, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of a moment when you stayed too long in a place that was hurting you. Maybe it echoed a whisper inside you that said, "You deserve better." You know, the Stoics used to say, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Madison couldn't control Brandon, or betrayal, or heartbreak, but she could choose how she responded. She could choose courage over fear, truth over silence, healing over bitterness. And that is the lesson for all of us. Your value does not depend on who fails to love you. It depends on what you choose next. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Her suffering didn't end her life. It redirected it. It made space for peace, safety, and a love that actually showed up. If this story reached you, even just a little, please like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us. Your heart is welcome here. Before we wrap up, I want to make something clear for everyone watching, and for the platform as well. This story is a fictional dramatization, created only for emotional reflection and life lessons. It isn't based on real individuals, real companies, or real events. Everything you've heard, from the characters to the situations, is written solely to inspire, comfort, and spark conversations about strength, healing, and self-worth. We're here to share meaningful narratives, not to accuse or mislead. If any part of the story resonated with you, please remember it's a safe space to feel and reflect, but not something that reflects an actual person's life. Thank you for understanding, and for supporting content built to uplift, not harm. If you enjoy these journeys, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps our stories alive.